She just bit a lump out of her arm and spit it straight at Governor. It bounced on his shirt.
What?
Absolutely unbelievable. So we had to then go in and step in because we didn't know whether she was going to attack Governor at that point, you know. She'd never talk. Then all of a sudden do something like that, you know what I mean? You'd think, where's all this come from, this rage? Yeah, she was. She was horrendous. There had another woman she was a nasty old woman. And as I looked in, she had a sheet over her head in bed. So I shouted, "Take that sheet off your head, please." No answer. "Take the sheet off your head, please." No answer. I'm thinking, is she trying to entice me in here? Has she got something under that sheet and waiting for me to enter? We opened the door, went in, we pulled the sheet back, and she got a plastic bag over her head.
Oh.
Yeah, and tied with a sock. And her eyes were bulging out, absolutely bulging. So I ripped the bag, trying to get air to her, you know. And as she took a sudden intake of air, was sick, but she'd had a catheter fitted. That shot out and went all over me and Dave. We had an old lady come in once. "Oh, Mr. Graham, you don't look so well this morning. Do you want a cup of tea or not?" You know, she'd be like that. Her husband had abused her all the marriage. Physically, mentally and sexually. And this particular Saturday night he'd gone out on beer and she must have thought, well, when he comes back I'm going to... But she tried to deflect off by saying the dog had attacked him and got his neck and, you know. But what actually happened was she'd put a tin opener round his neck to make it look like dog bites. A little Lakeland terrier, a little red one, you know. I was like, just a little terrier. And she went, "Oh, it was nasty though, Mr. Graham, it was nasty." In her mind, she thought she was innocent. Obviously, people want the loved ones put into rest before Christmas. And this particular day I did 17 cremations. And babies, crikey. I never ever, that was one thing, I never did a baby at Pontefract Crematorium without crying. True. I'm nearly crying now because it touches you that much. You're doing the cremating, so you're, well, in charge, and you have to then get into the cremator. That is hard. Poof. I mean, when I used to do it, crikey, I got a baby and I used to say prayers and do it down as quick as I could. Awful, horrendous. So anybody who's lost a baby out there, don't get me wrong, I know it hurt you, but it hurt me too.
I'm absolutely delighted to have one of my favourite guests back, Kevin Graham. And part one, it was the brutal prison officer stories. Part two, we're going to do some more brutal prison officer stories, but we've also got Kevin's crematorium stories. And we're also working on the republication of Kevin's book. So hopefully we'll have some news on that soon as well. A huge thank you to Kevin for coming back. Before we get into it though, we're just going to, start out with one of Kevin's stories so you can see what's coming and, graphic content warning, folks. So thank you for coming back, my friend.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for watching again. Thank you.
You were telling me about a female prisoner who was storing newspapers.
Yeah, at the time when I was serving, every day on one wing there'd be one paper, and say number one seller get it one day, number two would get it the next day, and obviously whatever they did with the papers they could pass it on to whoever for them to read. But this lady, she'd never been in trouble in her life, and she got 2-year sentence for assaulting a police officer. Anyway, she started, sort of SHing herself at times.
Yeah, we're going to use SH for self-harm, folks.
And, she was under scrutiny for that sort of behaviour. But to be quite honest, she never really did anything that was to bring us attention to her that much. We'd just keep an eye on her. But, unfortunately, she'd been getting these papers off the other prisoners and storing them up under a bed or wherever she was storing them. She'd obviously made a scheme in her mind. She'd got a plot there, what she was going to do. and obviously she got it intended for a night time where it's a skeleton staff of officers. There's only one officer who, if I would have been on nights, would have had the key. That'd have been me, security officer. So there's only me could have opened that door, but I weren't there on that night, that particular night, I hasten to say. But what happened was that this particular night, she barricaded the door from the inside. She packed herself with papers, down her trousers, up her blouse and everything, and then put torch to it. Unfortunately, obviously people were ringing bells and buzzers, concerned because obviously smoke, alarms were going off. Officers attended straight away. Everybody did what they could do because the door had to be taken off from the outside to get access into her. And obviously by the time they got in there, she was in a bad way, burnt. Ambulance was sent for. She was taken to Pinderfields Hospital because that has a burns unit. And we all thought she'd probably die from burns. We'd all got through the grapevine news that she was so severely burned they had to keep her in a coma. She had to have bras, things, undercut bras removed surgically. She had to have zips removed surgically. It was so nasty what had happened to her, you know. I mean, I don't know, but it probably would have been a blessing if the girl had gone, actually, because she really did suffer. She did suffer. What she did, that's her problem. She got time for that, and she'd have done her time, but she took it upon herself to do what she wanted to do.
So you're saying the rings from the bras melted into her?
Into her chest, under her boot, under her breasts. So it was horrendous, absolutely horrendous. And
were you one of the people who had to go into that cell?
No, I wasn't on nights then. No, it were obviously other people there, people who I knew, and obviously they had to, put up with that. And
did they describe what it looked like?
Well, they just said it were horrendous. The whole thing, the whole room were horrendous, smoke everywhere, and obviously you've got fire brigade comes out. Even if they just set a litter bin afire, the fire brigade will come to make sure everything's all right. So, with something that's on that magnitude, you're going to get a lot of problems. So I would have thought on that particular night, Sandra would have caused a heck of a lot of trouble in that prison, an upset, because there's only a skeleton staff and there's only so much they can do because they're still there to keep prisoners, under lock and key. And there's only so much they can do. But she was taken to hospital immediately. Obviously, 2 officers had to go with her. But then it then turns into bed watchers. And if I'm not wrong, I think Sandra was in that coma for nearly a month. Must have been nearly a month. I did quite a lot of bed watchers on her. There were another chap who I know, he's left service since. He did quite a few on her as well. We did a couple together. But usually it was just one officer in plain clothes because she was no threat. She was unconscious, and all she did was just lay there. But we had to be there just to make sure that, she was still in custody, legally in custody.
So if someone's in a coma, you've got to be present to have them legally in custody.
Yeah.
Isn't that a bit of a waste of resources?
Well, you would think so, yeah, because, obviously they can't come out of that coma because the doctors keep them under, don't they? So in actual fact, it probably is, Sean. I sat there endless days just sort of watch it telly, then you'd have a wander down to the canteen for your dinner or whatever. And while you were down there, something could happen, couldn't it? But, that was just how it was. It's obviously the legal side of things that we had to uphold.
From your perspective then, was it nice to have a break from the mayhem, sat there, or was it boring?
Well, both. It was boring, yes, but it was nice to get away from the mayhem, as you suggest there, because it could, in women's prisons, it does get a little hyper at times, especially that once a month, because obviously it's like nature. When one cycles, they tend to all cycle. And once they're cycling, honestly, you've never been in a place like it. It's so different to what it was the week before. It can get really, really uppity. because they're going through a funny stage. You know, it's hormones flying everywhere.
And you feel you're like walking on eggshells when that
Oh,
happens?
yeah. I mean, one night, a girl who never ever had words with me, I was on E-Wing, which is the biggest wing at Newhall. There's 100 women on there. And what we used to do then, I don't know what they do now, but we'd walk down the doors and locking in on a night, and they'd walk down the banister at the side to get round to the other side, so that the officers at the other side could lock them in. Anyway, this one, she's walking down, and she's like walking on doors straight into me. There's plenty of room at this side. But oh no, she didn't want to move. And she walked. I said, what on earth are you doing? She went, what are you doing? I said, have you not noticed I've got keys here and I'm locking up? Like, have you not noticed that? So she went, it doesn't matter. You could have moved. I said, look, just go round to your cell. I don't want to fall out with you. Just go round to your room and I'll come round in a minute and have a word with you. Anyway, I went round to see her because I weren't best pleased, I'll be honest. I went round to see her. And when I opened the door, she was in floods of tears. And I said to her, what went on there? And she just said, I'm having an effing show and all this, and I'm really having a bad time, lost my kids and all, I said, well, I'll tell you what we'll do. I said, we'll come to an arrangement. I'll say sorry to you, but you say sorry to me, and we forget the whole matter. And she just said, are you having a laugh? And I went, no. She went, well, that's fantastic, thank you. So she straight away, sorry, Mr. Graham. I went, well, sorry to you as well. Good night. And that ended the matter,
So you're watching Sandra, I think you said the name was.
Yeah, Sandra.
And does she eventually wake up then?
Yes, and I was the man who was there when she
No
woke up.
way!
Yes, I was. And that is right, thank you. I was there, and she, at first thing she said, because I was sat, I can always remember, I was sat in this easy chair and I was watching TV. And I'm there watching, and all I heard was this, Mr. Graham. So I looked at, and she's like waking up. So I said, hello, Sandra, are you all right, love? Are you feeling all right? And she went, I need a drink. I went, what, this? And I got this pop, it was in a glass. So she went, yes, but I need straw. Because she couldn't use her hands, you see, they were all burnt severely. Oh. Everything was burnt really bad. Anyway, I got this straw and I put it to her mouth. All her lips were all scabs. And I was trying to get the straw between scabs, and she went, I need it closer. And she went like that. All scabs went over my finger, like over the top of my finger. And I was like, oh, no. But I'm trying to think to myself, the woman's had enough. She don't need you to be like saying, Sandra, did you have to do that? So I just said, no, you're all right, Sandra. Don't worry, keep drinking. But I'm like thinking, oh, my God, I couldn't wait to go wash. But she was someone who, sort of, I don't know, she just sort of got on with it. If it had been me, that I would have been writhing in pain, I'll be honest. But she just got on with it. I don't think I heard a moan about it.
What was the functionality like then? Was she all bandaged up?
Oh, yeah, very bad. And she had to have, even when she came back to Newhall, because she came back in custody, she had to have this cream on her every day. And they had to lather her in this cream. I don't know, maybe twice a day or something like that. But she was horrendously burned. Horrendous. It was an hard thing for Sandra, what she'd done. It was, for her to then live with. But it was an hard thing for officers as well to sort of help and touch, and because we're not medically trained. We're not in that position where we help people like that. And when you're like grabbing her hand to get her up or something like that, and all these scars and scabs and things.
Did she lose a lot of weight while she was in the coma?
She did lose weight, but I wouldn't say to a great degree. She didn't go down to because they feed them through tubes, don't they, intravenously, like. But no, she didn't. She did lose some. Yeah, she did lose some. And to be honest, when she went on a good day, before she did obviously what she did, she was a nice woman, really. She'd only done that one offence in her life.
Do you know why she did the offence?
I don't actually know. I've no idea why she struck him. But obviously something didn't ring right, and she wasn't agreeing with that one, and struck him and didn't realise consequences. And she got 2 years. But that turned into an horrendous 2 year, And then she had Well, she had a daughter who they put in a flat in the hospital. My God, what a girl. My friend said to me, so look, when you go, Kev, just beware of this girl. She's like absolutely gunning for everybody who comes.
So hold on a minute. So the daughter was put in a flat at the hospital to watch out for the mum?
Yeah, to be there for her mum, so as if anything happens quickly, because I think the hospital thought that she was actually going to pass. But she didn't. She didn't. Like, she did pull herself through it, did Sandra, God bless. She did pull herself through it. But this daughter, horrendous. She was absolutely horrendous. She came into the room one day when I was there and she went, "Who the F are you?" And I said, "Well, who are you?" "I'm Sandra's daughter." And I said, "Listen," I said, "I'm not being funny, love. I know you're upset. I know your mum's in a bad way." I said, "But I'm only here doing a job. I'm not here to fall out with you or to fall out with your mum. I'm just here to do a job. So let's just leave it at that, shall we?" And she's going, "Well, I tell you something, you'll not be telling me what to do and all." I said, "I've no intentions of telling you what to do, love. Stop it." But this is what you had to put up with as well, you see. And you've no backup. Until when Sandra did come round, we did have two of us then. Because obviously then she has to be put, into restraint.
How did the prisoners receive her when she went back?
Well, to be honest with you, Sandra was a bit of a lone wolf. She didn't really bother with many prisoners. And I think they all were sort of, "Hello, Sandra, blah, blah, blah," but I don't think they really knew her. Or there were very few that knew her, really. She kept herself to herself, did Sandra. I think she was one of them kind of people that were sort of quiet, but if you said the wrong thing, then she'd probably be a different person altogether. And I think they knew that, so they kept a wide berth. Yeah.
So was it the smoke that caused her to be detected, what she was doing?
I would say so, yeah. I don't know exactly, but I would say it'd be smoke because alarms would be off, smoke alarms. Obviously, inmates would be buzzing as well,
So if you'd have noticed a prisoner stashing newspapers like that, what's the procedure from there? Is it classed as contraband, is it?
Yeah, well, straight away, that if we'd have known that she were doing that, or whoever wing officer was on there at the time, I don't know who that was, really should have picked up on that, especially with her being obviously into SH, then she should have been watched to a respect that, just have a look in her cell when she's probably out at work, because mainly all of them work, and just have a look round, just make sure everything's all right, they haven't got no contraband in there. But obviously nobody had, because she must have had, I don't know, she must have had 4, 5, 6 maybe papers, to stuff herself with them. I don't know.
What a story, Kevin. We'll get back to that anyway. So we're going to go back to before Kevin was a prison officer, to his crematorium days.
Yeah.
Because there's some fascinating stories there. And then we're going to come back to some more prison stories. But before we start the crematorium stories, Kevin just wants to put it in context, don't you?
Yeah. Basically, what I'd like to say, Shaun, is that I'd like the people out there to know that I've come today to talk about crematoriums, because a lot of people over the years have asked me questions about procedures that happen, and they've questioned procedures and things like that. And obviously, I know it's an hurtful time. My mother's gone through a crematorium, my father's gone through a crematorium, and both crematoriums where I worked. But I can honestly say, in the 10 year I was there were never no procedures broken. And all them people, your loved ones that you left behind, take it from me, treat with the utmost dignity and respect. Promise.
So, Kevin, how did you fall into that profession? What were you doing before it?
Well, I was actually grave digging at Wakefield for Wakefield Metropolitan. And
how did you get that job?
Well, it was strange at the time, because I'd come out of army and jobs were scarce, because the Honourable Margaret Thatcher was in. We all love in Yorkshire, don't we, folks? And so anyway, she was in, and jobs were really thin on ground. And I had dug a grave with a friend of mine when I worked in pits before I went in the army. And so I exaggerated that I'd dug 6 graves, not 1 grave, to the panel that were interviewing me. And they said, "Oh, yeah, we'll have this chap. Yeah, we'll take him on." Anyway, I went, and there were some great guys in cemetery, absolutely great guys. I'll never forget them. And one were an ex-Coldstream guard, actually. Yeah, great guy. He's passed away now. But they took me under the wing, showed me exactly what to do and how to go on. And I got on with them brilliant. And I made a great job of it, if I say it myself. I did make a good job of it. And so, obviously, I got noticed. And when I put in for this job at the crematorium, they thought, right, he'll do for us. Yeah, he's better up in front. So they put me into that position. What I never thought about, Sean, when I did take it, was Pontefract's about 5 mile away, isn't it, from my house? And I'm thinking, now how do I get to Pontefract now? Because I couldn't drive at them days. I used to go on a push bike to work. So then I had to think about getting a little Honda, under 50, under 90, that sort of thing. And that's how I got there. And then obviously things progressed from there, where you got into driving a car and rest of it.
So is the training involved?
Yeah, there were training. Great guys who were there. Got on with them great. They trained me up. And I actually, it's funny you should say this, but me and my wife have been searching the house all over for my exam certificate, because I've still got it framed. And I've moved it somewhere, and she knew it was somewhere, but I've moved it, and I couldn't find it. I wanted to bring it today to show people at home that, I passed this exam. And to be honest with you, it was quite a daunting exam. This guy came in, and he was like a witch hunter when he come in. He had black hair and straight back, and he had a long black leather coat on. I thought he was from Gestapo, when he walked in. I thought, hello. And but he was a nice guy, don't get me wrong. And I did it, me exam with him. Passed first time, so I was all right with that. I was happy with that. But the cremators that were at Pontefract Crematorium in the old days, when I first started, oh my goodness, they were, shocking. If you were to have gone round back of there and looked at it, don't get me wrong, everything was done, as I've just said to people there, were done as it should have been done. Procedures were followed. But it was the equipment we had to work with, so prehistoric. And then after about 2 years, they decided to close us down for, I think it was about 2 months. And they ripped 4 cremators out, which that's what we had at the time, and replaced it with 3 cremators, a local firm to here, Manchester, Furnace Construction. Well done. And they put these 3 in, and they were electronic, all computerised. They were brilliant. They were as efficient, them 3, as the 4.
So before the upgrade, what was the procedure with the old equipment?
Oof, now then. I hope we don't take this funny, folks, because I don't mean it funny, but we had like two cremators together, like semi-detached houses, if you like. They're 2 here. And upside each one were about a 20-foot poker. And that poker was a gas poker. But absolutely crazy. What you had to do was you'd have to get the gas poker off, put it, this is true as this, put it on the floor, you'd step over it like that, pick it up, pull it through your legs, hold it with your knees like that, turn the gas on and light it like that. Then you get the cremating, the gas and the air, turn them to, where you needed it. Then the poker goes in, and then hopefully the burners light up, and then you pull the poker out, turn the gas off on that, and then put it back when it was in the beginning. Oh, it was prehistoric. Absolutely prehistoric.
All right, so deceased persons coming through.
Yeah.
Where are they in the context of what you just described?
Right, well, as they come through, as everybody will know who's listening to this, who's been at Pontefract and left the loved ones, they leave them on rollers. And then people file past and out, and then doors are shut. And then what happens is the doors behind the coffin open, and the coffin's pulled through onto what we called a bier, which is a set of rollers, basically, and as it comes through, the doors then are immediately closed, because there may be another funeral coming in minutes. So they're immediately closed. The paperwork's all outside. So you'd get the paperwork, and then you'd check with the coffin, make sure that was the guy in there, age and everything else, name, everything, matched paperwork. Then if there was a cremator free, the cremator would then be lifted, and the deceased goes in, but only one goes in. And I hasten to add that fact because a lot of people ask me over the years, oh, no, they put 2 in there, they save money and things. They don't. Them chambers are not big enough, folks, for 2. They'll only fit 1 person.
I hope you're enjoying the podcast. It's a word from my sponsor, Shopify. When I started this podcast, there were a lot of things I had to figure out on my own. Algorithms, guest booking, marketing. I was a bit naive about what was involved, and as you get deeper into it, it starts to overwhelm your life. Finding the right tool that not only helps you out, but simplifies everything can be such a game changer. For millions of businesses, that tool is Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world, from household names like Mattel and Gymshark to brands just getting started, such as my co-host Ron's Pokemon business. Get started with your own design studio of hundreds of ready-to-use templates. Shopify helps you build a beautiful online store to match your brand style. Accelerate your content creation. Shopify is packed with helpful AI tools that write product descriptions, page headlines, and even enhance your product photography. Get the word out like you have a marketing team behind you. Easily create email and social media campaigns wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling. And best yet, Shopify is your commerce expert with world-class expertise in everything from managing inventory to international shipping to processing returns and beyond. If you're ready to sell, you're ready for Shopify. Turn your big business idea into with Shopify on your side. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.co.uk/Shaun, SHAUN. Go to shopify.co.uk/Shaun, shopify.co.uk/Shaun. Link in the description if you're watching on YouTube. Thanks for supporting our sponsor. Back to the podcast. All right, so 1 goes in.
Yep.
You've done this thing with the...
Lit the gas jets.
Are you lighting that before the person goes in or after?
No, that goes on before.
So you've lit it.
Yep.
And you've extracted that.
Yep.
Then the person comes in.
Yep.
And then what happens next?
Then we'd lift the door. There'd be 2 of us. So like me and you, say there with this deceased. We'd lift the door. We'd get the beer up to the doors. We'd pump it to the same level. And then there's obviously a pin that stops the coffin from moving about. Take the pin out. And then, okay. And then he pushed in. And the deceased goes in the coffin. Full as you leave it, that's how it goes in. There's nothing removed, or that's how it goes in. Everything goes in. And then what had happened is, basically the foot end had stopped like on a bit of a raised earth, so then there's air can get underneath. And then obviously then you have to go around back, because at that point everything's getting on fire then, so you have to control the air and gas and know how much you need in there, because if it was starting to get like too much air, then it'd start coming black, so it'd be coming black out of the chimney. You try to keep that as clear as you can, because it's disturbing for people, but it really it's only wood. It's just the wood that's giving that off. So that's where we are with with that. But I can honestly say that's how it happens.
So to maintain the proper balance, then you have to monitor the situation the whole time.
Oh yeah,
and
you
make
can't
adjustments.
Leave. Yeah.
So you're watching the deceased.
Yeah.
How they are cremating.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what challenges can arise at that point? Well,
depending on size of a person as well. Like I'm a big chap. You're more of a slimmer chap. So you'd probably take more gas than me. I could probably cremate myself without gas, if you like, because, you use a lot of what's in you yourself. So everybody's different. Everyone's different. And you have to treat everyone different. And it all has to be looked at and made sure that you're not introducing too much gas or too much air. I mean, obviously, when it changed from them to the computerised, that understood balances, and that were doing a lot of it. But you still had to intervene. It was quite a difficult task, really, to keep things, where it all was like outside looking all right. Because the last thing you want is something like that, bellowing out and people just leaving the loved ones. You don't want that.
So if you're watching the deceased to keep this balance,
yeah,
when the deceased is being cremated, do they just remain flat, or do they move or sit up or anything?
No, very, very rare, very rare. We'd look through an inspection hole, just to make sure everything were all right in there and everything were going all right and there was nothing, untoward. And no, very rare do these people move or, it does happen. I'd be lying if I said it didn't, but it's very rare.
What about bodily fluids and things like that?
No, that's another myth, is that, because very rare do you see anything like that. I think in the 10 years I was there, I maybe saw one.
It just happens really fast, does it?
Well, not fast, because every cremation is round about between 1 hour 30 and 1 hour 45.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it is slow.
Yeah, and there's different things as well that can affect it, because depending on what's in coffin, for a start, because a lot of people want to go with things that's been sentimental to them and things like that. So obviously it's got to be combustible, but that might take longer than, anything else. But you've got to wait for that to finish. You cannot take, a rake and start raking it down.
What's the last part of the human body to go?
The brain.
The brain. Is that because the skull protects it?
Yeah. It can be very, very difficult, can that as well. That can put 15, 20 minutes on a cremation. Now, normally, if people have had, what do they call them, autopsies and all things like that, and then obviously sometimes it's not actually a problem, whereas it is a problem when, they haven't had that. So, the brain is the last thing that you'll lose.
So if the brain is being stubborn, then do you have to apply more fire or pressure or air, or
you do tend to put more gas on then?
Gas.
You've got to put burner on, because if not, because everything else is gone, it'd just go cold with cremator, and then you'd just be left with something that you got to reheat again. So it's just a necessity. It's just you've got to do that.
What about things like tumours?
Well, I've never seen anything that they do any damage. No, they just go with body. It's just part of body,
And you're talking about the size of the deceased. You had a story about a famous wrestler, didn't you?
I did, yeah. Now, I've been hoping to drop on his family, to tell them before I came in case they're watching this. But I will just say, if I may, it was a guy called King Kong Kirk. He used to wrestle in the 70s. Malcolm Kirk from Featherstone. Big fella. Real big fella. And I once had an incident with him as a young lad. He did a bit of bouncing at a transport cafe near me that everybody went to. Anybody who's watching this knows Redbeck. Everybody knows Redbeck. And he used to do a bit of looking after it there, And this particular night I'd come in with a few friends. And he was walking around, and he used to have a little snide at you and things like that, because he was that big, nobody dare say to him, And I just said to him, "Oh, shut up, you big fat," as you do as a young lad. He went, "You what?" And he come round, and oh my goodness, he raced me around these tables. And he was like Linford Christie. He raced me out at place, and I left me super. I thought, no, I'm not tackling Mal Kirk. I'm off. So I went and later down the line, just to put it right, Mal Kirk came to Pontefract Crematorium. He died. I believe he had an heart attack in Ring with Big Daddy. I don't know if that's right, but I believe that's a true story. Anyway, the crematorium were packed with wrestlers. Everybody who'd wrestled came to Mal's funeral, which I'm glad they did, because he was a great guy. And he was so big, Mal. So big. When he came through, the beer I told you about earlier, I have never in 10 years known this. He came through and he went onto the beer and it's hydraulics, and the hydraulics went down about 6 inch. He was that heavy. And me and my friend, we were trying to pump him and we got him up to where we wanted him and we just managed to get him into cremator. And just as we did it, I thought, Malk, you raced me round that Redbeck, so I'm going to get my own back here. And I went, 1 2 So I'm sorry, guys. It was just a bit of fun between me and Malk. I meant no malice against him, but I know Malk could have seen it as funny if he had been able to laugh. because he'd have probably killed me if he'd have caught me that night. But I just thought, on that occasion, it was something that happened in wrestling world. When referees used to get on canvas, didn't they? So I thought, it was just something that I'd got meltdown type thing.
So what was other notable cremations then?
What, sorry?
Other cremations that you remember?
Oh, crikey, so many. We at that time, I believe now, I think they only do about a maximum 8 a day. That's what I believe. I'm not sure. But at the time when I was doing them, Sean, we were 14 a day. That was sort of maximum day. And every week it'd be your week on, and then it'd be Pete's week on, David's week on, So as long as that last body were in the cremator, they'd all go. So you'd be sat there or stood there and doing everything else you had to do when they'd gone. So sometimes you might not leave till 6, 5:30, and they'd finished at 5. And then you have to lock everything up. And you're left here in winter nights. It's really eerie, it's really eerie because you're in the middle of nowhere at Pontefract Crem. So it would a bit hair raising, all that like. But the most I ever did, and I think I hold record for this, 17 in a day, and that was near Christmas. And reason being, obviously, people want the loved ones put into rest before Christmas. Funeral directors want their room as well over Christmas. So they tried to get as many in as they could. And this particular day I did 17 cremations. I got home at my house to my mother's at time for about 8 o'clock at night. I was absolutely shattered.
Did you ever detect anything supernatural?
No, I never felt that there were anything there. And to be honest with you, I've never really, over years from being a lad, I've never really bothered. There's only been 1 or 2 cases where I've ever felt a presence. But even though I'd done all them cremations, never once, I dreamt. And that was the only time in all them. And I dreamt this chap had gone out at cremator, climbed up on top of cremator and was sat there having a cup of tea. And I'm saying, no, come on, you've got to come in. It's your turn this time, come on. He's going, no, I'm having a cup of tea. And that was a dream. And that was the only dream I've ever had. You'd think that you probably have a lot more scarier dreams, but no. I think it's just you go in there with your mind open and you've got to take responsibility for what's coming your way.
So how old were you during the crematorium years?
Let me just see now. I'd say 25, about 25, 26, something like that. And I was there, thick end of 10 year. By the time I left council, thick end of 10 year. So I had quite a long run there. Yeah, quite a long run. I went through all that refit.
So when the technology changed, what was the procedure then?
Exactly the same, but the cremators, they decided for you when things were right. You didn't sort of stood there with a silly poker and things like that. You'd press buttons, and the buttons would then indicate to fire up burners or to turn on air or. So it was a totally different thing, as to them prehistoric things. Where on earth they got them from, I don't know.
So when the coffin and the person, when it's all fully cremated,
yeah.
What's the next step then? The ashes are given back to the family, is that it?
Well, no, there's more to it than that, because obviously what you're looking at then is, how can I put it? You're looking at a skeleton that's bleached, really. It's not like if me and you were skeletons on floor here would be hard or, bones of it. No, they're like bleach with heat.
Oh, so there's still a skeleton?
Yeah, but not a skeleton as in, like, just laid there. There'll be bits here and bits there and, without, I don't want to make it sounding too graphic to people at home, but it's all there of the person. And that then needs raking down into the next level, which it comes through. There's holes at that end of the chamber, which is the foot end, and there's holes at the head end. So everything goes down either them, and it's all then, there's an underdoor that's opened, then all them remains are scraped to the front, right up to the front, and then the next one goes in the top, because the heat off the next person purifies them. so as that when people go for remains or to watch them be scattered, it's not all black and, nasty. They're more clean and white, and that's because that's been purified. There's no mixing. They don't mix. It's just the heat from the chamber above that actually purifies. So that stays in for maybe half an hour of that cremation, and then you'll put it into a stainless steel tin that looks very much like this corner piece here with a funnel at front. You put up to the door, rake it into there, and then it has a lid. You pull them away, open the lid for it to cool down naturally. Then once it's cooled down, then the last procedure then happens, which is they go through a cremulator. Now, a cremulator is like a big industrial washing machine, but it's got steel balls that don't get washed. It's got big steel balls. And the reason they go through there is because to get it into a form like we see for scattering, there's no other way to do it. You couldn't scatter them as they come out. That'd be impossible. That'd be tragedy. So they have to go through this cremulator. And then, once they're out of there, they come into a tin at the bottom. Then they're put into their own urn with their name on. That name follows them everywhere. So we know who that is. So that can't be Shaun Attwood because it's Kev Graham. You know what I mean? There's no mixing. So that's what I wanted these guys to understand, that there is none of that, and it is your mother.
So ashes never get lost or mixed up or anything like that?
Never, ever in that 10-year hour there did we lose ashes or did we get mixed up. Everything was done as it went through. It was cremated, and then it was cremulated, and then it was tagged again. So at that time, in them days, we used to put them into like brown plastic bottles. But now I believe they put them into like a wooden container now. But there's no way anybody got mixed up. No.
So family members are, sending their people, loved ones off. What's the tensions like when during that phase of it? Some of them, it is hard for them. It's harder than most for these people to lose people, and some sort of accept it and they'll have a few tears and they'll walk out and say the byes to the mum or the dad. But some will get physically and really emotionally upset, and and you've just got to help them. We don't all react same to a loss, and we have to then accommodate what we've got in front of us, because I can appreciate how bad it is. I've lost my mum, I've lost my dad, I've lost my brother. And I know it's horrendous. But they've all gone to the crematorium I worked at. Now, if I thought there were anything wrong with that crematorium, there's no way they'd have gone there. So, I know that place is so at its top level. Do family feuds ever break out?
Oh, yeah. Oh, crikey, yeah. You can feel it. You can feel the atmosphere. One side will be sneering at the other side and they'll be sneering. And you're thinking, oh, crikey. Let's hope this don't kick off. Very rarely has it ever... I don't think I ever saw, a spat or anything. More just bad feeling. You could feel it,
So you were a relatively young man in your 20s, early 30s.
Yeah.
When you're young, you feel invincible, you're going to live forever, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But now you're seeing all these people go through the process.
Yeah.
Is it making you rethink about the fragility of life?
Oh, of course. I never stopped thinking about it. Now, you see, I've been around death since I was 18, Shaun.
In the military?
No, when I did that first grave with that friend of mine, because his cousin's back had gone. And he said to me, can you give me an hand, Kevin? Blah, blah, blah. Both of us hadn't got a clue what we were doing. Not a clue. And we went and dug this grave, and it just looked like a bomb had landed, to be honest with you. It was just a big hole when we'd done. We hadn't got a clue. But that's how it all started there. And since then, I've always looked at death differently. And now I'm 66, just got the pension, folks. But now I'm 66. It's like, you think, well, hold on a minute. It's not a million miles away from me now. So, and when I go down at cemeteries, crikey, I look at cemeteries and all my friends are in there. It's like going back to school. There's pictures on gravestones. And I'm thinking, hey, what's going on here? Like, how long am I going to be like? You know, and honestly, it does make you look at life differently.
But as a young man working in that profession, did you start to appreciate life more because you saw people passing, and you perhaps realised because of the spread of ages of these people that things can happen to anyone?
Yeah, and what I think one of the certain things that got me when I was there were young lads who motorbikes. You know, they thought they were like Barry Sheen or whatever on a bike, and you know they weren't going to crash, and the next thing they were obviously with us, and that used to hurt me, that, because I'd look at them and, you know, coughing, and I'd think, you got all your life in front of you, lad. You know, what have you done here? And that used to break my heart. Oh yeah, and babies, crikey. I never ever. That was one thing. I never did a baby at Pontefract Crematorium without crying. True. I'm nearly crying now because it touches you that much.
Because of the weight of the baby, is it a different...
Oh, yeah.
It has to be done differently.
Everything's done differently then. Because the baby's only small, it's carried through. You're doing the cremating, so you're, well, in charge, and you have to then get into the cremator. That is hard. Poof. I mean, when I used to do it, crikey, I got baby, and I used to say prayers and do a dance quick as I could. Awful, horrendous. So anybody who's lost a baby out there, don't get me wrong, I know it hurt you, but it hurt me too.
So, you know, seeing people from all ages then just pass for whatever reasons, it's just got to give you a real appreciation of what you've of living, being alive, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I'm pleased I've got this far, if you like. I'm 66 because, you know, I've had near scrapes and with different things. I've done silly things as a young lad. You know, I remember being on a banking, driving a motorbike with a friend of mine up back, and we couldn't stop. The throttle had got stuck and we were heading to where there were a bridge, but no bridge. So it was a case of either we jump or we go over that bridge. So I just shouted to him, we're going to have to jump. And we just jumped. And now that could have killed us. That bike went flying in air. One bar hit him in the old chestnuts, and one got me in the eye. You know, it could have killed us. But we're lucky to live through it. You know, it wasn't meant, that lottery number wasn't up that day for me, whereas it would have been for a lot more.
So, you know, by the time you're in your early 30s then, would you say that you're quite professional? You know, your skill set's been enhanced? Yeah.
I think that helped me a lot with prison service, because the things you've done and the things you've seen, the things where you've been and how you've handled people, you know, because it is a very delicate time in life, is that very delicate. So you have to be on your best behaviour and everything, you know. It made me a better person with the people inside as well, you know, and they understood me. They understood where I was coming from. They knew not to cross line, and I never crossed line while I was in there, never. Whereas a lot did, and people who you'd never think would. It happened when I was there, and I'll be honest with you, Sean, if somebody had said to me, listen, put £1 on it, you'll get $1 million, he's done so-and-so, I'd have said, no, I'm not putting no £1 on. But they had done it, they crossed lines.
So what was, you went from the crematorium to the prison service, when was the military?
That was 79, that was, and then I went in there at 82.
How old were you then?
I was 23, 24. Yeah, somewhere around there.
So the military came first.
Yeah, then I went in pits for 2 years, then I went to military, come out of there, and I went to, I actually, as I said, there were no jobs. A friend of mine, she was what was she now? Secretary at Railway. Lovely woman. If you're watching this, Pauline, I love you. Now, what she did was, absolutely, this was ridiculous. She told the gaffer from York, who was the big gaffer in the railways, so when shall I tell Mr. Graham to attend work? Mr. Graham? Who's Mr. Graham? Well, you interviewed him. The other day you interviewed him. I don't think I did. No, you did. I brought him into here and all. All right, okay, time to start on Monday. I'd not even been. But this woman, bless her heart, she got me a job there. I only stayed about a few months because money were absolutely shocking then. And I got that job then in cemeteries. And money went up, I think it was about £50 overnight, which is a lot of money in that day, day age. And then crematorium came up. I took my bus licence, trying to get doing buses going across the continent, but the money was no good. So I got into prison service not long after then, and I was quite happy, Sean, at first, I've got to say that, and there were a lot of good guys in there, a lot of good women. I can't call them all, because I won't call them all. They weren't all, like they've said recently that I've said that they're all lazy, and no, I didn't say that, and I don't mean that. They weren't like that, you know what I mean? Some were, don't get me wrong, and they were, but not them all, not them all.
So you're saying that your background then, because like we interviewed a prison officer today, and he was describing, what kind of people are coming into the service now. It's like college graduates. Yeah. It used to be like a lot of ex-army. Yeah. So you kind of had like a really qualified skill set when you were going into it.
Yeah. I don't get me wrong when I said this. Academically, they were probably a lot cleverer than me. The lads who came in from universities and everything else. I never had that chance in life. If you like, our drag-through system where it was, they just wanted us to read and write. That's all they wanted from us. Because we were all going to pits and we were all going to mills. Ladies, you know what I mean? And that's true, is that? That's what they had for us. So academically, they were better than me. But as in speaking to people, no way, not a chance, not an hope. They've no idea how to deal with them kind of people. You see, as I used to say to inmates, I used to say, why do you think you're wearing that shirt and I'm wearing this one? They used to go, well, because you're in charge. I used to go, no, because you got caught and I didn't. And that's true, because we've all done something wrong in our lives. And anybody who says they've never done anything wrong or picked a tin of soup up or whatever, they're liars. They're liars. We've all done something wrong that we shouldn't have done. And that's how I could talk to them so well, because I could get onto their level. But they knew that they could only stay at this side of the line. They could never cross that line. And I got a lot of respect. I did get a hell of a lot of respect. I just had that bad incident at back end, which ruined my career. Absolutely ruined my career. But they ruined my career. Not actually the inmate. She apologised to me for what she'd done. But they never apologised for what they'd done. No. And that's the kind of company they are.
And how long were you a prison officer for?
8 years.
8 years.
Yeah.
So you must have seen a lot of stuff.
Did I?
What stuff could we talk about that we didn't talk about in part one?
Well, I mean, there's things like, I remember once going to segregate. Well, sorry, no, not segregate. We went to chapel. It was a Sunday. And I took these girls from E-Wing. And to be honest with you, Sean, they wouldn't have gone to church, but they wanted to be out of the cells, which I'd have done the same if I'd have been an inmate. So, you could understand where they were coming. But we'd just take them over in droves to chapel. Anyway, I was sat at back there, obviously watching what they're doing, keeping the eye on them, behaviour. And I spotted this girl, and I'm looking from back, and I'm thinking, I don't know, right, that, And she had pigtails, but no hair, all the way around here from top. I thought, there's something wrong here. So, a girl who went on to segregation at the time, I had a word with her. I said, what's on there with her hair? She shaved it off. And she went, no. She pulled it out. Pulled every strand of hair out. But it was all absolutely perfect, and she just had these pigtails hanging. I could not believe that was one of the strangest things I'd seen.
What other strange things did you see?
But she was actually strange, actually. She wanted to, where did she want to go now? She wanted to go on healthcare, that was it. And Governor then, who was on duty, he knew he was going to have some trouble. So he asked for a couple of big blokes to go. So I went, and this other lad, who I won't name, but he was a bit bigger than me, actually. Me and him went to make sure that Governor were all right. And there was staff on segregation unit as well, Anyway, she's on about this and shouting and bawling and carrying. And he's going, look, I can't do this. I can't do with it. We're not moving to segregation. There's no room and all that. She just bit a lump out of her arm and spit it straight at Governor. It bounced on his shirt.
What?
Yeah. And, she was unbelievable, her. Absolutely unbelievable. So we had to then go in and step in because we didn't know whether she was going to attack Governor at that point, We were there at the back of him, but she was horrendous. And but she'd not talk to anybody. She'd never talk. Then all of a sudden do something like that, you know what I mean? You'd think, where's all this come from, this rage? But yeah, that's one of the strangest things I ever saw with that,
What were the other strangest things you saw?
Well, you'd see a lot of things in there like what was strange. We had an old lady come in once, and I don't think I told you this one. She came in from Barnsley, and a lovely woman. I think she'd probably be gone now, but if she ain't, God bless you. She was a lovely woman. She tended to be like my mum. She wanted to be mothering me all the time. Oh, Mr. Graham, you don't look so well this morning. Do you want a cup of tea or not? She'd be like that. Ah, yes, I'll have a cup of tea. But what happened with her was her husband had abused her all the marriage, physically, mentally, and sexually. And this particular Saturday night, he'd gone out on beer, and she must have thought, well, when he comes back, I'm going to have another torrent, So what she did was she got it into her head to kill him. But she tried to deflect off by saying the dog had attacked him and got his neck, and But what actually happened was she'd put a tin opener around his neck to make it look like dog bites. And I knew what this dog was, but I thought I'll ask her, see what she says. And I said, what this dog like? What is a big dog, a Rottweiler like? Or what are you like? She went, oh, no, he's a little Lakeland terrier, a little red one, I was like, just a little terrier. And she went, oh, it was nasty though, Mr. Graham, it was nasty. I thought, she ain't even going to give it away to me. She won't, definitely, in her mind, she thought she was innocent. I think what it was, it just got that much for her, and I think she just did it and then tried to prove to herself she was innocent. Obviously she weren't, she was guilty of it, but at the same time, exactly at the same time, she came in and another woman came in who killed her mother with a marble rolling pin and broke the marble rolling pin over her head. That's how much she hit her. And she asked me if I could get some paper for her to write. So I said, well, what do you want to write? She was up on healthcare, She went, well, I want to write a letter to my mum to tell her I'm sorry for having a fallout with her. I said, I don't think you need to bother with that letter, love. No, I wouldn't bother sending that letter, Well, no, I want to write to my mother. So I thought, I'll just appease her. So I give her some paper, for her just to write a letter, because she didn't think she killed her. She'd no idea she'd done that. Yeah, that was at the same time as she came in, other lady. And there were them two, and then someone else, but I can't remember. There were three of them, what were strange, who come in all at the same time. But you're bombarded with them, and they take quite a bit of looking after at times, people like that, because they're psychotic,
What about, you mentioned just at the start about the lady who set fire to herself.
Yeah.
Was fire a common thing?
No, youngsters on YOI wing, that were only like under 18, so they were on the young offenders. They'd very often set the bin on fire in cell, but what they did it for was a different reason altogether. They weren't intending to kill themselves or anything like that. They just wanted these unky firemen to come out and look at in the cell and put the fire out or whatever. Well, it'd be put out before they got there, but firemen have to come because it's procedure. And then obviously they'd be whistling and shouting out at windows at them and things like that, and there'd be the odd flash of this, that and the other, and we'd be having to say, hey, pack it in, and firemen just sort of went on the way but that's what they did it for.
So did the ladies ever manage to establish relationships with staff members of any sort of staff?
Yeah, it did happen. That's when I was relating to it earlier. A chap who, well, I thought he was one of the nicest people I'd ever met in service. And if he was sat here now, I'd still say the same to him. Because if you had a problem or you wanted some advice, I'd go to him and ask him, and he'd always give me the right advice. And he would always, he was a great guy. He was married, 2 kids, everything else. But what we used to do is, the people who's watching this as well, if they admitted it, it's true. We'd all have some girl who would be using you as their confidant. We used to call it dynamic security, whereby they're telling you what's happening on wing, basically, to put you in the picture before it absolutely gets out of hand, so you can control, or if somebody's running drugs and they don't like them, they'll tell you so you can stop all this. Well, she pulled me, this girl, and she said, Mr. Graham, I need a serious word. I said, what's the matter, love? She went, I can't sleep on a night because of that effing officer. I said, well, who? And she told me. I said, well, what's he doing wrong? Because he's next door. He's with her in bed all night. I'm like, no. I said, don't start making allegations like that. I said, I'm going to have to now go in security and report this, and I don't want to. I said, but I'm going to have to. She went, no, I want you to. She went, that's why I've pulled you. I want you to tell them what he's doing. Anyway, I thought, I don't believe this. So I said, right, okay, leave it with me. And I went in, and I was part of security. And my gaffer, who was PO in there, I went straight to Chris. And I said to him, Chris, I said, I've just had a bit of information, He said, what? I said, well, there's an officer. And he went, don't go no further. He went, we know. He said, he's under scrutiny. We've got him watched now. And I'm part of that team, but I never knew this. So I said, he went, yeah, don't fill no paperwork in, Kev. It's all being looked at now. Next thing we know, he got sent to Armley on detached duty. She was being released in a few days, so that she wasn't going to give nothing away, this prisoner. But when he went over to Armley, what he didn't know was the prison service had put a private detective on him. So in his dinner hours, they were following him, and he would go into this girl's flat. So they got it all on video. And when he came for his disciplinary, my gaffer then, security, said to him, right, he said, are you going to sign this, keep your pension and walk away with your head up? Or are you going into this meeting? He went, I've done nothing wrong going to this meeting. So he went, well, I'll tell you what, go and have a look at that videotape. And he knew what it was. And he just went, give me that. He signed it, and he went. We never saw him again. But yeah, it was going on. It was going on.
Wasn't there a staff member who got together with a murderer?
Yep, she was not in Newhall though. She got with him in Old Prison. She left us. I actually had been training with this girl. She'll know who she is if she's watching this. And she passed her SO's exam. Clever girl with this girl. Always admired her. She was always lovely to get on with. And I never ever thought this would happen. And she went as an SO, senior officer, to Old Prison, where I don't know whether her husband then or whether it was still a boyfriend, but he was an officer there. He'd done his training with us at the same time. Then next news, she was sacked for having relations with a bloody bloke who'd been, sent down for God knows how many years for murder.
And you're saying she had married a prison officer?
I'm sure she was married to him, yeah. She met him in training school. They worked in the same prison, but she was an SO.
He mustn't have took that very well.
Well, can you imagine what it looked like inside that prison? Because all them inmates will have known what was going on. So as he's walking landings, it looks right, doesn't it? So I can imagine, if you're watching this, you know you are.
How was they detected?
I don't know how she got detected, I'll be honest. I think somebody snitched on her, or they were videoing, or I don't know. I don't know exactly how it was, but I know since then he's come out and they're still together. And they seem, I don't know the bloke, I've never met him, so I can't really talk about him. But they seem happy together. They're running a little business. Because
a lot of time, the prisoners try and use a staff member and pretend to get things smuggled in.
That's it.
And then they drop them, don't they, once they've used them?
You see, once you cross the line, that's it. If they say to you, would you mind bringing me 20 cigs in? You know, I can only smoke tailored cigs. Would you mind? And I'll do whatever for you in here. You know, I'll tidy up in here or whatever. Now, if you did that, the next day it could be, can you bring me a bag of cannabis in? Oh, no, I can't. Well, you brought me cigs in, so I'll tell the governor then if you... So that's how they get you. And then it goes on from cannabis to something else. So you never cross that line. If you cross that line, which I know people who have, then they'll keep on at you. That's why these mobile phones are getting in, because they've got these prison officers, bangs to write, and they're getting them to bring them in.
What about relations of prisoners and prisoners having relations?
Oh, that's something that happens all the time. You get many a woman who come into Newhall who'd always been heterosexual, but they'd be with us maybe 2 months and they'd be other side of the fence.
Is that just gay for the stay?
I think probably it is. I think it's just gay for the stay, like. But it's like, you know, I've seen it. This one incident, this was so funny. I was on E-wing, and this girl, she was absolutely snogging this girl's head off in bed. And I got to cell, and I said, hey, you know that's wrong. It's not done in here. Come on, pack it in. Otherwise, I'll put you on a charge. So they were like, oh, sorry, Mr. Graham. Sorry. All right, yeah, don't worry about it. It's all right now. And then later on, after dinner, I was on visits. Anyway, the same girl came over to visits, and her husband's there, and he's like, oh, where are you? We're doing love and all. And he wraps his arms around, and she wraps her arms around, but her head went over his shoulder, like, you know. And I went like that, you know, to her, and she just went, you know what I mean? And that's what it was like. Obviously, I'm not going to tell him. I'm not going to say anything. But, you know, that's what it was like. It was going on all the time. They were living a double life in there.
So if they're discovered, is that disciplinary action, or is it just allowed to go on?
No, they shouldn't be doing it. Especially, they walk around holding hands and things like that. That's by the by. But if you were to catch them in an active sexual act, then, you know, you're supposed to then nick them. It's called nicking. You know, you'd put them on a charge, they'd be taken to segregation overnight, and then they go in front of the governor next day. And then at one time when we had it, which has all been taken away from us, they'd get he could put up to 28 days on the, sentence. But they took that away, took that off us. You know, so it got to them where he had to then improvise, or she improvised by saying, well, right, as from now, you're going to lose a month's association, so they won't come out on a night, you know, with other prisoners and things like that. So it was a bit nasty for them, don't get me wrong. They could be a bit brutal. It depended on what governor. Some governors were funny with it, you know, and like sort of, you know, be right with them and more or less laugh it off. But other governors were...
When you're doing your head counts and shining lights into cells, did you ever come across any ladies making love like that?
Well, they're all basically singles, but there is, what do they call them?
Lover's Lane.
Lover's Lane, yeah. No, but there is 2-ups and that, you know, but not many of them, but there is 2-ups at Newhall. And I once, a girl who I'd known from her being on YOI, and she was always a bugger, but she was always all right, you know what I mean? And on the outside, she'd got time for prostitution and things like that. But on the inside, she was fine with me. She was all right. She always used to like to have a laugh and things like that. So I had a lot of time for her, really. And she was padded up with another girl. And when night shift come on, when you're on nights, you'll go around and do head count as well. So obviously you've got to look in, you know, and count. The next one. And these two were in this cell. And I said, now then, what you doing over there then? She went, hello, Mr. Graham, blah, blah, and all this like. She said, we're going to have a good night tonight. I said, what do you mean you're going to have a good night tonight? I said, don't you be starting any trouble over here. Have enough on. I said, you know. And she'd made a bottle of hooch. That's what she'd done. She'd made a bottle of hooch out of cereal, which I don't know, but I don't think she could have got drunk on that like. But I said, if I were anybody else, you know I'd take that off you. I said, but because it's you behave yourself tonight. Oh, yeah, no problem. Never did another thing. They were fast asleep snoring next time I went round, like, you know. But that other officers, and rightfully so, would have opened the door and taken it off them, and they would have put them on a charge. But there's certain things that you can go to, but not go over the line. That's far enough, is that one.
Would you say that inmate-on-inmate relationships are more common in the women's prisons than the men's?
Yeah. I mean, I've not had a lot to do with men's. When I went to Wakefield, I was only there, I think, 2 months in its entirety. But
what year was that?
that was, I don't know, 2008, wasn't it? 2009? I can't remember, to be honest. It's a long time since. But Wakefield is so boring. And, to be honest, I couldn't stay there. In women's prisons, you're always busy. Every one of them officers who are watching this now, they're busy. Whether they want to be busy or they don't want to be busy. Because they always get lazy buggers. You get them everywhere in every walk of life, don't you? But it's always something happening in a woman's prison. In the men's side of things, generally when it happens, it's serious. You know, it's either an attack on a member of staff or it's a serious attack on another inmate. So it is nastier, but they don't really bother with staff that much. Unless you were somebody who were blatantly bullying, then I suppose they'd have it in for you. But unless you're not.
The other officer we interviewed today was at Wakefield, and he was the Yorkshire Ripper was there, Ian Huntley was there.
Oh, I met Huntley.
There was a few really high profile ones. Who were the highest profile ones when you were there?
Well, I don't know why this chap got this wrong in the last one, but I'll put it right on this one. I didn't actually meet him. He said hello to me. I didn't actually meet him, but I went over to F Wing, which is where Bronson were kept. And when he come out in his room, because they opened him up while I were there, he just went, "You all right?" That's all he said. "You all right?" And I went, "Yeah, no bad, chill, no bad." And that was it. That was, you know. But this chap seems to think I said I worked on F Wing. I never worked on F Wing. Then there's another chap saying I never worked at Wakefield. I did work at Wakefield, but not for long. Anyway, that's another argument. But in there, the governor, he were obsessed with Huntley.
Yeah, the guy who came in today said Huntley was like walking around like he owned the place.
Well, Huntley, they couldn't get him into normal population because there's so many in there that just want his neck. If you put it bluntly, they want him. And he knows that. And that's why he won't come down. So every time they go to move him, he either tries to hurt himself or, you know, in numerous ways. And then he's left up on healthcare for a period of time that, you know, has to be assessed again. And then he'll do it again. So when I first went there, because I've actually got me hostage negotiators ticket. And I think they called the governor at that time, Dave Simpson. Nice bloke from Sunderland. And he had me in his office and he said to me, "Kevin, I want you to go up there and talk to him and see where we are with him. See if we can get him into normal population."
Because he's killed 2 little girls, just to put in context. Yeah.
Shocking. And I did go and meet him on a couple of occasions. But to be honest with you, I don't think anybody's going to get him off there unless he's just forcibly removed. And at that point, we know what's going to happen. So we're going to cause ourselves a lot of trouble. You know, it'd be us who'll be under bloody beams then, not him. It'd be us.
Yeah, Matthew was an officer 10 years after you, and he said there had been a few attempts on Huntley, but he survived them and sold his story about getting attacked.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean, my wife was reading today something about Bronson selling his paintings. Why is this? You know, why are we allowing this? You know, it's rewarding bad behaviour. In a woman's prison, we used to take the tellies away because why would they have a telly if they were bad? Why would we give them? You know, we don't reward bad behaviour. That's what we were taught. So we wouldn't take them away. We'd turn them off with a fish hook, you know, a key, and that'd be that. And I don't see why somebody like Bronson's getting on when women who probably shouted abuse at somebody get the telly taken off them.
What about the Yorkshire Ripper then? Did you speak to him?
Never saw him. Do you know that bloke, when he were on prowl, I can always remember, like, take his dog out late at night, and I was always looking round, you know. Oh, he had me on tenderhooks. I was
just a kid. I remember it all over the news.
Yeah. Oh, Well, that's another story, but me and my friend were in Leeds once, and we pulled up to ask directions because we got lost. Nobody had sat-navs in them days. And he had an escort, you know, these old Ford Escorts. And as we pulled up, I don't know where police come from. They were just like, woof, they were all over us. What are you doing here? I said, well, we're just asking directions, like, we don't know how to get up back to Mud. Well, you know, the Yorkshire Rippers aren't loose, don't you know this, and you two's pulling up and asking women. We were like, look. So we were thinking, oh, Christ, we're going to get hawked off, but no, just get on your way.
Jimmy Savile was a suspect, wasn't he?
Well, met no wonder. I mean, Jimmy Savile, you know, let's face it. I mean, some of them things they show now, what at time you never looked at, did you? But when he shows you, when he were on top of Pops and that young girl jumped like that, you know what I mean?
It's animal.
You know, the guy would it was something else, wasn't he? You know, it was something we didn't know him. But they always seem to get to know about these people when they've gone.
Yeah.
He's all high profile.
Protected.
Yeah, that's what it appears to be.
Yeah. So you're talking about the SHs.
Yeah.
And we were talking about fire. What other things did they use to SH?
Oh, we'd have severe cutting, you know, like with TV screens. They were a favourite.
TV screens.
Oh, they'd smash TV and use that. One girl she's dead now. She hung herself in Newhall. But I don't know that I told you this on the last one, but I'll tell you again. There were a set of nights going, and these nights were on a wing called G-Wing, which hadn't been with us that long, this G-Wing, but it were how can I describe it? They all had their own key, like a semi-open. That's what we call it, semi-open. They'd all have their own key. There's only one bathroom in there, but they can only come out, you know, like if they need toilet, not bloody using it as a thoroughfare. And to be honest, I thought I dropped on my feet. I thought, a week now, put my feet up, because the girls who were on there didn't want to lose that accommodation. They had their own, you know. So I thought, lovely week, this is going to be smashing. First night, they sent for me to healthcare. We've got an incident on healthcare. Can you go over and give him an hand? So I went over, and this girl, she'd smashed TV. She'd ripped herself up to death, you know. Absolutely, had her legs and arms. And we were wrestling in with her inside to get her under control. And my shirt were full of blood. My friend's, his shirt were full of blood. Then we had to open a 24-hour watch on her then. Nurses bandaged her up. Because I remember saying to the nurse who were up there at the time, don't you think we ought to get her to hospital? Shouldn't we send her out in a pinders, you know? No. That's how they were. No sympathy. So she were there with these bandages on, and I'm sure to this day I would have been writhing in pain and crying and whatever, but not her. She just come over to me and she said, Mr. Graham, I'm really sorry for tonight, and I didn't mean to make all that on your shirt. I said, look, don't worry about it. You'll just go on your bed, love, and go to sleep. You're all right. She just got on the bed and went fast asleep. Yeah, that is true, is that? And we sat there all night. So that week I was going to have where it was lovely and no problems turned into a hellhole all week.
Did you come across a lot of different types of ligatures, people trying to unalive themselves?
Yeah, there were lots of different things. We had a woman who, she was like at it all the time, you know, she'd use anything she could get her hands on to do it. There had another woman who, this particular day, she'd had attacks on officers. She had attacked officers, and she was a nasty old woman, to be honest. She was knocking on, but she was really nasty. And I were on this wing, and I went to the door and opened inspection hatch, because she went on an SH book, and every 15 minutes we'd have to go and check. And as I looked in, she had a sheet over her head in bed. So I shouted, take that sheet off your head, please. No answer. Take the sheet off your head, please. No answer. I'm thinking, is she trying to entice me in here? Has she got someone under that sheet and waiting for me to enter? So I thought, I ain't going in there on my own. So I ran down to office right quick on to Res 1 office. And there used to be a guy there who were an SO, he were a character. Dave Lynn, the call. I'll name you Dave. Dave Lynn, a character. And he come back with me. We opened the door, went in, we pulled the sheet back, and she got a plastic bag over her head.
Oh.
Yeah, and tied with a sock. And her eyes were bulging out, absolutely bulging. So I ripped the bag, trying to get air to her, And as she took a sudden intake of air, she sort of was sick, but she'd had a catheter fitted. That shot out and went all over me and Dave. So you can imagine we were covered in urine, plus all this spew and everything. And that would just throw another ligature. She'd obviously intended to kill herself. And instead she nearly killed me. Yeah.
Did you have to cut any down?
Yeah, we've had to cut them down from taps even, on sinks. They'll just hang the sin off them. Lots of they'll try any way they can. And when you've never done self-harm, SH should I say, when you've never done SH in your life or before you went into that industry, you've never seen it. But then when you come across it like I did, in all them years, then they wonder why it affects you mentally. And a lot of us do suffer from post-traumatic stress. And I'm still suffering with it because there's lots of things, flashbacks, incidents, the way I was treated, for no reason in that at all. And I still feel that guilt, that I did nothing wrong.
How many did you have to cut down?
Oh, I don't think I could even start telling you, Sean.
So basically they're like seconds away from dying, turning blue.
Yeah.
And you're going in and
saving
their lives.
Yeah. Yeah. Or they're tying up on bed. They'll just tie it so tight. Some of them so tight. You can't get your fingers under to get your fish knife, because we all carry fish knives, to get that under, to slit,
They've tied themselves to the bed.
They've tied the ligature so tight.
Oh, the ligature tight to the bed.
So tight on the neck that you can hardly get your fingers under to get the fish knife under. Obviously, the fish knife's shaped like a fish's mouth, so it's safe as it goes under. It's just plastic touching them. But the razor blade inside of it cuts the ligature. And I'll tell you, sometimes I've struggled like mad to get that on them.
So you've got to be trained in how to do that.
You've got to be trained, and you've got to be control. Because if you lose control, and I've seen that before as well, where people have just lost, will to live, if you like, officers. I've seen them sat down in a cell, this particular officer, and he just threw his fish knife at wall, and just said, I've had enough, I can't carry on no more.
And he couldn't cut the person down?
No, he'd done it. We'd done it between us. But he'd just had enough. He just threw fish knife at wall.
Does one have to hold the legs while the other cuts?
You've got to keep them under control, yeah, so you might have to put restraints on their hands. It's CNR, control and restraint. You'll have to put them on to restrain them. But very often, they're like nearly dying, so there's no restraint really needed that bad, to get them cut off.
So when they calm down, do they thank you?
Well, normally, yeah, some do. Some will come to you and say, look, I'm really sorry for what I did there, that incident, and blah, blah, blah. And I used to just treat it like with respect and just, oh, don't worry, we don't really want to see it, but don't worry about it, love. Just keep it saying, if you've got a problem, come and see me. So things like that. But some of them, they'd hate you for it. You should have left me. I wanted that. And you think, well, how do I know that, you really wanted to? Some don't. They just do it for attention. Some do. But there is them that are intending on doing it. Yeah, and it's a shame.
What's the most creative ways of the SH?
Well, creative ways that they use is... The best way is that with screens. But coffee jars, that's another one. And I mean, well, you know yourself how thick that glass is. And obviously they can use that. But it can also be used as a tool to attack officers. I've had that on one occasion. A lady come down from healthcare and she had this shade of glass. And it should have been, because before they can leave healthcare, the officers up there have to search all the belongings before they come down onto natural population. But for some reason, they probably left her because she was an old woman and thought, it's all right. They might have done it. I don't know. But she came onto this wing where I never really worked on there. But she came on there, now we're on there. And she was obviously a pensioner, so she didn't work within the prison regime. So everybody went off to work and she went inside. And as everybody went off, that's when you do your paperwork. Buzzer went. So I went to her cell. I said, what matter? Well, can I get a cup of hot water? So I said, no. I said, you get the water before you go in. I said, when everybody's gone to work, you have to stay in. I haven't got a cup of tea and all. So I thought, I was thinking about it. I thought, should I let her out here? Because I'm on my own. Has she got some intentions? Does she want the hot water to throw at me? Or does she really just want a cup of tea? So I thought, I'm going to go for this one. I'll go for it. So I said, look, I'll tell you what. I'm going to let you out for a cup of tea. You'll go straight to the boiler, straight back in. Is that okay? Yeah. She went up to the boiler, got this water, and I'm thinking, it's red hot, is that boiling water? And she's coming walking down like, and she's getting near to me, and I'm like sort of backing off a bit, you know. So she went, would you mind coming into my room? So I went, well, actually, I would. I said, we don't go in rooms. I said, you go in them rooms. We stop this side of them. I said, so you'll just go in with your cup of tea, lovey, and we'll talk later. So she went, well, do you mind if I just bring you something? I said, no. I said, you go in your room, I'll wait here. I'm thinking there's something going on here. I'll maybe drop one here, you know. She come out with this towel, and she took towel unfolded and a shard of glass. And she give me it. She went, I'm going to give you it like this because you're a nice officer, you. She said, I probably did have intentions another way of giving it. Like that to me. And I went, well, I think you better just pass it over to me, eh? And she gave me this shard of glass. Oh, God. And honestly, I thought there's something were going on through her mind at that point. She were either thinking if I'd have said, well, no, I'm not letting you out for a drink, like a lot of officers wouldn't, they'd have been in the rights because she had, you know, would she have done it at that dinner time when they all came back and she would unlock then to come out to get her cup? Would she have done it to whoever officer who denied her?
What were the worst injuries other officers sustained?
Well, I never really saw any bad injuries in Newhall to an officer. They'd have like things like maybe scratches or bruises, you know, where they'd been in a bit of a rumble with an inmate or whatever, you know, because, you know, you do get big inmates. I mean, some big girls get in there, you know, I mean, real big lasses as big as me. So, you know, it depends who's there and how you handle it, you know, because you're not supposed to really, if a fight broke out and there were only you on a wing, so your other friends are somewhere else on wing, but you were in close proximity, then really you should be ringing bell or waiting for backup. But it's human instinct to sort of try and get in between. You know, it's human instinct, but you are actually breaking rule. And if you get injured at that point, then it's down to you. It's not down to the prison service. And I think perhaps maybe there has been occasions where people's got injured like that. So it is a bit unfortunate, but it is human nature. You know, you see something like that, you just react.
What about female prisoners getting attacked? I mean, female staff getting attacked?
Yeah, well, some female staff, well, I can't say ask for it, but some of them are domineering and brushing, and, you know, they bring it on themselves, some of them. So they do get the bad side of prisoners, which I'm sure everybody will understand. You know, they're not in there for being nice people. They're in there for doing things against society. So in my respect, I always looked at the point where, you know, you kept a fine line with them. But they didn't. They'd enforce the law, if you like, and that then enrages them. And that's when it can be nasty, you know. So it's unfortunate, but it does happen. It does happen where, you know, they can get attacked. And the lady who we talked about earlier, I did stop an attack on her because I had got that sewn up. I was watching from a landing and I could see 3 or 4 of these girls that were planning to drag her into cell. And they'd probably have beat her up to a pulp. In time I could have got there because there's 4 of them going at her, you know. But I went down and averted that because I told them what I'd seen and what I'd picked up from the body language that they were intending on what they were doing. And they were like, well, no, at first, you know, then they actually admitted, well, yeah, because she's done this to us and she's been like this. And I said, that ain't the way forward. We can't do this. You know, I can't allow this. I said, you start doing this and you're going to be in a lot of trouble. I said, on this occasion, if you don't follow it up, then I'll let it lie. I I suppose, lied a little bit there because I was watching them more closer than normally I would have watched them.
Was there any other situations where you detected the atmosphere change?
Well, it did with me once, actually. And I think this was the only time ever I really came across somebody who, for whatever reason, I don't know, had really got it in for me. She hated me. And that's the only way I can put it. But she was on the healthcare, and she was from Leeds. I always remember. She's from Leeds. She was a big chunk of a girl. And next thing we knew, she was flooding a cell. So, obviously, you've then got to, like, turn off outside, you know, and all this because it's all flooded in. So we're trying to... This had never happened to us. So we didn't know where these sodding things were to turn off. And we found them in the end and turned off. Anyway, I went to inspection on. She was sat on bed and she was like swinging her feet in water. You know, like you would paddling at Cleethorpes. And I said to her, why did you do that? She says, because of you. So I said, because of me? Why? What have I done? She said, I asked you earlier for a toilet roll. And you said you'd bring it back. I said, well, I've got other jobs, you know. I can't just run about with a toilet roll. Oh, so I can just S myself. So I said, oh, no question of that. I was coming back, but I said, but look what you've done now. So I thought, I'm not happy with this. I'm not happy at all, but I thought, there's going to be no retribution against her now. So I went and got this toilet roll, and I went back, and I said, so do you still want to go to the toilet then? So she went, yes. So I went, there you go. And I threw it in straight to water. Oh, that was it. She absolutely, I mean, I understand her going crazy, but I was absolutely annoyed to death. I was annoyed to death. But this toilet roll went straight in water, and she's shouting and bawling. And we had to remove her from healthcare then after that incident. And there must have been 5 of us. There were 1 on head, there were 2 on arms. I remember my boss, Chris, he was at front, organising. I was at back, and she kept trying to kick me all the time. We were walking to segregation, because that's where we were taking her. She was shouting abuse at me and trying to kick me, you know, and all this. And then he had to give order to take her down because she was getting so difficult. So we had to take her down to the floor. And I had to start laughing then because this friend who put on 1 of her arms, she was a big girl, you know. And as she went down with her, she had trousers on and they split, didn't they? So all that went straight up. So I was at back and I could see all this split up her, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness. So that was, you know, that was a bit of a humour in it, but it wasn't happy. She wasn't happy about that split. And then when we got her to there, she just absolutely shouted abuse at me. Shouted abuse.
Any other funny ones come to mind?
Another funny one that actually comes to mind. We had a girl who used to come in regular. We all knew her. We used to call her June the Loon. And she was a drug addict from Dewsbury. She'll know if she's watching. And whenever she saw me, or other staff as well who she liked, she'd always make some of you. When she was leaving one, she jumped on me. I'm like, and she's like, I'll see you later, Mr. Graham, you know, I'll be back and all this. Like, and I'm saying, June, get down, will you? You know, and but we once had to take her on a charge. She'd been working in this workshop where they made brollies. You know, them big golf brollies? Well, they make them at Newell for golf people and what have you. Anyway, she couldn't fathom how to make these brollies because she weren't very clever, wasn't June, you know. And she's kicked off in this workshop and we had to get her out of there because she was absolutely raging. And we went over for her, like, and she carrying on. I said, June, calm down, you know. And we moved her out. We didn't have to get her under restraints, but she had to go, you know, with those officers. And we took her to segregation. And then next morning she went in front of the governor. And this governor, he's still a governor now. I don't think he's retired, but he's at Wakefield. And he was a great guy. I worked with him a long time. And when I told him what had happened, he was laughing his head off then. You know, what had happened, because she was just like June the Loon. That's how she behaved. So he said, right, okay, come on, get her in. So went to the cell. I said, June, he's ready for you now, love, come on. She went, oh, aren't I blessed here? You know, and she comes and we went in front of Governor. So Governor said, right, you were carrying on yesterday at Workshop 5, making these brollies, and you shouted abuse at the instructor and all this. Like, yes, I did. Well, so that's a guilty plea? Yes, it is. Well, why did you do it then? And the way she explained it, I mean, I don't think I can say it on camera, but I'll say it as best I can. She went, because it's them effing brollies. Who can put an effing brolly together? I can't put one effing up. Never mind put one together. Oh, and she was carrying, and we were all looking at one another. Me and him were dying to laugh, me and another officer. And I kept looking at the Governor, and he was dying. And he just went, right, you're guilty on that, Joan. So what we're going to do, we're going to do that. It was something, nothing, he gave a lie. And we took her out, and when we took her back to the cell and we went back to where he was, we were all of us in stitches because of what she'd actually talked and, you know, what she'd done. It was so funny, you know, just because it was, she wasn't like dangerous. She was just one of these girls who were hyper.
Were there situations where the prisoners would bully another prisoner?
Oh, that happened regularly, yeah. That's some of that happened regularly, Sean, where they'd be getting things off them, you know. They'd want this, they'd want that, they'd want, you know, sweets or whatever. Because obviously it's all about tobacco and sweets, you know, and things like that. I know, yeah, they'd be bullying them left, right and centre at times, you know, and obviously then it would affect their mental health. So they'd either start SHing or they'd come to us crying and want moving. But then it's hard to move them anywhere within that establishment because the ones that are bullying them have got control of this and that, and they've got friends over there as well. So it very often carries on wherever they go. It's just a shame you can't help them. You try, but you can't.
And were a lot of them addicted to substances?
Oh, yeah. I'd say that's the biggest problem inside Newhall. I'd say as much as 90%. Yeah. We had a wing where we had murderers at first. They all went up to Low Newton at North East. So we lost all them. And do you know something? I know this might sound ridiculous to you, but that was nicest wing to work on, what murderers. Because they were all, knew that they were doing a good stretch. So they were all behaving themselves. They were all polite. Very rare did you get any trouble off them. Very rare. And cells were always clean. Lovely and clean. But then when you started going on to other wings, where they were just basically young kids who prostituted themselves, lived in cardboard boxes or in doorways, they weren't bothered about keeping things tidy and clean, and, you know, so you were forever on them for that, you know.
Yeah, the lifers just want to get on with it, don't they?
That's it, lifers want just leaving alone and just get on with it. And, you know, very often they'd be so nice. You can't imagine what they've done. But some of them, what they've got life for and who they've killed, in my opinion, they should have been given a medal, never mind time, you know, for what they've done to their children, shall we say. Put it that way.
Yeah, I've seen stories of mothers who've killed men who've done things to their children.
Yeah, we had one there.
I don't think they should go to prison. That's ridiculous.
I used to tell him, listen, I'll tell you something now. You should have been given a medal. Never mind brought in here to us.
What was her story?
Well, this chap had been interfering with the children, and she found out. Anyway, I don't know how she did it, but she killed him and put him down a grate, down a storage. I don't know how she went about it. But to meet her, if you were to meet her now in here, lovely lass, lovely. But I can understand that rage. I can really understand that rage.
Any parent would feel that.
Yeah, of course they would. They'd feel that sort of... I know I would, if somebody had interfered with my children. And I've been in game and know that it's wrong to take life. But they have, in respect, taken away a lot from you and your kid. You know, so I think it's the law in this country that's wrong myself.
Agreed. Do you ever get recognised by prisoners who've been released?
Yeah, very often.
You're quite distinct.
My wife, she wouldn't go to Barnsley. She said to me, we cannot go to Barnsley no more. Because all she could hear was, Mr. Graham, Mr. G, Mr. Graham. You know, and they'd come over to me, is this your missus, Mr. Graham? And my missus would be like, because she don't know him and she don't know what to say. You know, and she'd say, yeah, this is, you know. Oh, and she's lovely, isn't she, you know. They never ever said out wrong. They never were nasty or abusive. Some of them had said to me, I'm hungry. So I said to him, wait there, I'll get you a sandwich. And I used to go into Greg's, buy him a sandwich and a coffee. I would never give him money because I know where that'd be going. Straight to dealer, that'd be going. So I used to buy him a drink and a coffee, and that's it, you know. But yeah, I've never had an incident with them on outside where they've sort of shouted, well, you were no, but this and that and t'other, you know. Never had that. I even had one girl bang on window, and I looked at outside, you know, car I'm talking, I was at some lights, and I turned and I looked, and she went, do you want to buy a bottle of whiskey, Mr. Graham? I went, go away. £5. I'm like, oh, God, you know. But that's how they were. I think they thought you were as bloody bent as them, really. You were just in a suit, you know what I mean?
Is there any stories I've left out, Kevin?
Well, no, I don't think we have as far as prisons, I suppose. No doubt I could recall a few if I had, you know, time. But some of them I can't repeat because it's a bit near bone on some of them. But yeah, they're more or less, you know, a lot of funny ones there as well. I mean, the best one, as I told you on the last one, the lady who said she'd swallowed a rat. That was the funniest one ever. That one, I never ever, honestly, I could not believe that day when she asked me, she said, don't worry about it, Mr. Graham, just give me a knife. I'll cut it out. And if I'd have given her a knife, she would have done. And I'm saying, no, now give up, Pam. No, you can't do this, love. Now, I'll sort it out after dinner and all this, you know. And I'll get medical advice and all this. But she's there, look, can you see it running in my belly and all? She was convinced she'd swallowed a rat at night. And that was funny, that.
Yeah, so if you want to watch part one, there's loads more. I'll put the link in the description box. I'm just looking at some of the comments here. I've pinned your comment. I would like to thank each and everyone who's commented on my podcast.
Yeah.
Yes, it was hard to bear my soul, but yes, it gave me strength and solace. Shaun and Jen are a lovely couple. They made me feel like I was loved again. People who know me know I've always been a caring and loving person. And that's why when they see you on the streets, they just... Yeah. They're so nice to you.
It is.
Let's see.
I was never nasty to them. Never.
Thanks, Mr. Kevin Graham. You're one of the best guests. Absolute banger podcast. Awesome stories from an honest, down-to-earth guy who was unfortunately wronged by the system. Please have him back on. That's from DJ Proba. Well, here he is, if you're watching DJ Proba.
Right on, baby.
What a lovely chap, and an ex-Coldstream guard, as was my late father. He reminds me of him too, straight-talking Yorkshireman.
Yep.
And also great company. That's from Mystified Margot.
Yep. Second to none, Coldstream.
Jacqueline, Kevin is very credible, fantastic. And Lee Marvin, shout out to Lee Marvin in Manchester. This guy has the most insane stories I've ever heard from a prison officer. His book will be crazy. We were working on republication of the book. Kevin's book will be a bestseller, someone said. God, you've got a lot of staff members coming on, haven't you?
Oh, yes.
You've ruffled some feathers there, I think.
I did think I'd
one's written the longest comment I've ever seen.
Oh, yeah. I did think I'd, you know... And they're the only negatives I've ever found. So that sort of tells you the story, doesn't it?
Give this guy a shout out just for the length of the comment. DOSACHTI1. I don't normally comment on here, but I must do. I also worked at HMP Newhall. And then...
Yeah.
Like pages and pages of it?
Yeah, I've read it.
Good grief.
Absolutely ridiculous.
Carol says, Carl, I've only been watching 2 minutes and this is going to be great. Shell, can't wait for the audiobook. Rocky, love this one, Shaun. You can tell Kevin is a good man, proper Yorkshire. Blue Crow, one of the best I've seen by any prison officer. The system is toxic.
It is.
So, you know, Matthew was in here earlier, the officer. He said the system's about to collapse, or it is collapsing.
Yeah.
You have the same opinion?
I do. I have the same opinion. And not a lot to do with the older officers, because they have, a lot of them have got my respect. I've got to say that, because they do know how to run a prison and an establishment, and without them places would collapse. But it's the new blood they're bringing in. They're not really what should be in there, Shaun, to be honest. They're too young, they're too inexperienced. I mean, before I finished, we were on E-wing, the biggest wing, and there were 3 young starters. And inmates knew that these 3 young lads had come on. So they knew that they could fleece them. There were only me on as an experienced one. And Dave Lynn, who I spoke about earlier, senior officer, he was in the background in his office. He'll have been probably watching eBay or something. But he were in the office while I took charge on landings to get locked up. So the bell went, and normally when the bell goes, the girls get up and they're all loving one another. Good night, love, good night, yeah, good night to you, and all this and about that business. Takes us don't know how long to get them in, you know what I mean? But that normally just, sorts itself out. But they all sat down, and I were on top landing, and I could see that they'd all got their heads together and thought, we're going to run this one. And I thought, this is going to be a bit... There's only me here. Dave's off in office. And they shouted again, time, So I thought, I'm going to have to go for it here. I'm going to have to put my neck out here. So I just leant off at railings and I shouted, get your asses up here, all of you now. I said, because I'll come down there and I'll nick every one of you. You'll appear in front of that tomorrow, governor. I said, every one of you. I said, I'm not having it. Come on, now. And you could see him looking at one of us and say, shall we move, shall we move? And I said, come on. They started moving. And as soon as they started moving, I mean, don't get me wrong, I was 2 bob and a tanner like that, I was flashing. But because I thought, I can't rely on these young lads. And by the time anybody gets over here, it's a bit hard at ways, E-Wing. The rest of the staff to come over and they'll have been locking up at the same time. But they started moving. So I was really happy about that. And I was trying to have more of a laugh with girls then when they come up to keep them like feeling as though they'd done a favour to me, really. But what they were doing, these young lads were locking in, then the others were ringing bells further down to let them back out for some water. So I'm looking, every time I'm looking, I'm seeing, say, Helen walking down for water. Then I'll see Marjorie, who's been locked in 10 minutes since, walking out. And I'm shouting, what the hell's going on here? What's you wanted to... And I'm going, you know what you're doing, you lot? And they were all laughing because they knew what they were doing. They were just having them for silly buggers. And I just said, get them locked in, get them in, we're in. Because we've got to get them in for a certain time for count to go in to control room. Because if count don't go in for that time, every member of prison staff can't go home until them counts. And if I'm on that wing, it's me. But Dave Lynn come on and he was shouting and bawling as Dave did. He was only a little like, but little Geordie. And he was shouting, get there, and they were off like then, So it worked itself out, but that was a scary moment, actually. Because them 100 lasses, there's only, me knows what I'm doing, really. Them 3 don't know their own way, So if they'd have overpowered me, them 3 would probably run. I don't know. So I'm thinking, I've just got to take charge. I've just got to. And I did, and it worked out, fortunately. But it could have gone the other way, but that was...
So viewers, let us know in the comments what you thought of this one.
Yeah.
If you're a staff member and you disagree with Kevin, you're welcome to your opinion. Please post them in the comments. We love all of the feedback. We love you taking time out to leave comments, and we appreciate whatever viewpoint you've got. And give us a hug then, big man.
Okay, here we go.
Yes.
There we go. Come on, mate.